From Crocs to Chipotle, I went through 461 different companies whose ticker symbol starts with the letter C in the hope that I could find one I could invest in. This whole challenge that I've been doing where I go through every single company A to Z has turned out to be a lot more work and a lot more challenging than I thought it was going to be. 461 is a lot. I've been doing so much reading, I've developed an eye twitch. My eye has started twitching. You probably can't see that, but I'm probably fine. It's probably normal. If you're enjoying it, please subscribe. Every subscription is super encouraging to me, and I really appreciate it. Helps me make sure that I'm going to get it done. I'm going to do it either way, but I would like you to be here. Whenever I make an investment, I want to make sure that I really understand the company, and it's a company I really like. You cannot do that with 461 different names, so we got to really narrow that down a lot. So I took all the companies, and I found the ones that were companies I could understand and where I liked the business. And when I did that, it went down to a list of 16. So 96% of the companies I just tossed away. I understand that Crocs are the pinnacle of fashion, but that is about all I know about the company. I understand the idea of making burritos and burrito bowls, but they always get my order wrong, so I can't have them on the list either. The big goal for doing this and going through every single company so thoroughly like this is to find some small company, which is probably like in the billions, but some small company that has been largely overlooked and mispriced, and we can make a lot of money on because we'll get to own a lot of it because the price is low. Turns out there is a company on this list that fits that description perfectly. I am really excited to talk about it later, but first, 16 is still way too many companies to look deeply at. We're gonna have to narrow that list down even more, and the way we're gonna do that is with two more non-negotiable criteria. Does the company know how to make money, and do they know how to spend money well? Why are those two things non-negotiable? Let's think about it. An investment is essentially you trying to take your money and turn it into more money. Because of that, it can be a bit tricky. You can convince yourself that what you're actually doing is sort of depositing money into a different company. Like if I buy Walmart, I'm just depositing it like a bank account. I took my money from here and I put it there. That's not what's actually happening. What's actually happening is you're taking your amount of money, their equity, which is a part of their business, and you're swapping them. So you get some equity in the business, they get some cash, and now you own a piece of that business. So the reason we really care about if the company can make money and if they can spend money well is because you have made a single investment decision. You're going to make that decision once, but the company is going to take that money and they are going to spend it to make more money, and they're going to take the money from that and spend it to make more money, and it cycles and it keeps going. So those decisions are going to happen many, many times, whereas your decision only happened once. So before we ever look at the price of the stock of what we're paying, we need to make sure that the company can spend money and make money. And the reason you want to make sure that they can spend money is because if they don't need the money, why are you giving it to them? And the reason you want to make sure that they can make money is because you have other opportunities. You could buy a treasury, you could loan it to your cousin, you could do anything. You want to make sure that the opportunities of this company to make money are better than yours. And then you want to contribute capital to them so that they can do that on your behalf. And I like that we're on the letter C because Costco is probably one of the most straightforward examples. They actually make very little money on the stuff that they sell. They make most of their money on the membership that you pay yearly. The great part about that is that what they do is they get you to get your membership, they take that money, they build another store, they streamline their supply chain, they find some way to make what they do better for the member so that the member stays and they get more members. And then that's how they make money. And now they do it again and it just cycles through. So after doing this, we've narrowed down our list of 16 to 5. And this is going to exclude companies that are in debt, companies that are not currently making money, companies that don't have very good returns on the money that they invest internally. Now, it's not to say that there aren't business models and companies that exist and even thrive doing these things, but each one of them moves it a little bit further away from being a sure thing, and I really want to invest in sure things. If you're not in debt, you can't go bankrupt. Not making money, it makes things really hard. I'm not here to invest in a company that is up and coming and is, really going to get there next year. I want to have some sort of solace that they are going to do well now and in the future. So we've got a list of 5 companies and we need to get it down to 1. The thing that I always do is run through my checklist just to ask some questions, make sure I'm covering my bases. This is actually the first time in this series where something wasn't just outright eliminated from a clear question on the checklist. There was one company that was eliminated. It is Commercial Metals Corporation. It's basically a business where they take like old cars or things like that, anything made of metal really, and they sort of recycle it into building materials, so something like a rebarb. It does seem like a good business. It seems like the industry is going to be strong. Recycling is going to be very big in the future. They seemed really well set up to do that, but when going through my checklist, I just got a lot of medium answers, a lot of really mediocre things that I would come up with, even trying to look into the business, like how good is the management, how strong is the bond with the customer, things like that, where it's just not super exciting. It's not super clear where things will end up. We've got 4 other names, and we're going to move on. Starting with 461 names and getting down to 4 means that we're in the top 1% of our options. So let's go through these names real quick. CNI, which is Canadian National Railway. It's a large, multi-billion-dollar railway. It's one of the only Class 1 freight railways that connects the Pacific to the Atlantic through Canada, and Canada all the way through the United States down to the Gulf of Mexico. Railways are a very old business. They're pretty profitable. They are a much more efficient way to move goods than trucking, given all of the new green regulations and environmental concerns. That is going to be pretty important going forward. Capital One Financial, which is one of the largest bank holding companies in America. They are one of the more technology-centric banks that we have and are specialists in auto loans. Costco, which is the quintessential membership-based wholesale retailer, and I am not biased towards them in any way. And the last one is that stock that I was talking about, the one that's a little bit smaller, a little bit higher chance that it's been overlooked, and that is Casey's, which is a convenience store. It's a gas station. It's basically a gas station. This is why I love investing. Like, I'm excited about a gas station right now. When's the last time you were excited about a gas station? Casey's has over 2,000 stores, which makes them the 3rd largest convenience store / gas station in the United States, right behind 7-Eleven and Circle K. But the part that really excites me is that the customers seem to love it, and they have some of the best pizza in town, as long as that town is Iowa. So of these 4 stocks, there is something that concerns me about one of them, but I think it's a pretty solid list. Even if you want to put CMC back in there and have a list of 5, I think you could take the $1,000 that we're going to invest and spread it across all of them evenly, and that would be a pretty good portfolio that would do pretty well. The thing that bothers me is about Capital One, and it's specifically about biases. There are things that affect your decisions, whether consciously or unconsciously, that you don't really have much control of. The week that I was researching these companies, the new 13Fs came out, which, if you don't know, is basically very large investors have to publish by SEC regulations their holdings and their changes in their portfolio. Something very interesting happened, which is that a lot of large investors, seemingly independently, came to the decision that Capital One is a good investment because they bought it. Now, you have some big names here, right? You have Warren Buffett, Bill Miller, Michael Burry. Now, these guys are all very good in their own right, and they have fairly distinct styles that are pretty different from one another. So whenever they converge on an idea independently, that really gets my attention. The problem with this is that it is them making the decision. It's not me. The fact that I hold their opinions in high regard and respect them and their decision making really influences my own decisions. While I would like to think that I'm making my own decisions and that I have put Capital One through the same process as all these other companies and have done so fairly, and I would have came to the same conclusion whether or not those 13Fs were published and I saw them, you can't tease it apart. What's happened has happened. I've seen that they bought Capital One, and I can't undo that. So there's no way for me to tease apart whether or not I'm being biased, but I very well could be, and that is something that we always have to keep in mind. We need to get this list of 4 down to 1. The only real way that's left to do that is to look at the opportunity cost and figure out which one of these will I be able to make the most off of. And looking at it that way, I'm going to go ahead and eliminate Canadian National Railway. So in the rail industry, things can go wrong. It's not a perfect system. Derailments happen all the time. Sometimes things go pretty wrong. And I don't want anything to go badly, but if it does, the stock price might go down. Even now, there is a lot of contention built up around things like precision railways and derailments and the labor force and things like that. I think there's a large chance that something at some point happens that causes the stock price to go down a lot more, and that would just be a better buying opportunity. It's not that it would be bad to buy it right now. I just don't see those things priced in already, and I would like for them to be priced in before I bought. So just like that, we've narrowed things down to a competition between the underdog in Casey's, the sort of model child in Costco, and the current favorite amongst some of the other investors, which I am probably very biased towards. So what we basically have to do is try to figure out what the owner earnings are and how that compares to the current stock price. And we don't want to look at the stock price yet. We want to figure out our own number, what we would pay for the whole company, and then look at the stock price and see how off we are. Hopefully our numbers are correct and we can just rank order and choose the one that we can make the most off of. What owner earnings basically are is a company, of the money they make, they have to spend a certain amount just to stay where they're at. While that can be good if they're paying off some more of the money to the shareholders, we really want companies that make profits over and above that maintenance number. In doing so, they can either give that money back to shareholders or even better, can retain the earnings so that later on they can put it back into the company at high returns on investment. The classic problem with Costco is that everyone already knows. The secret is out. It's a great company. That makes it basically a really hard stock to justify buying into at any given point, but it's a great stock to hold. If it goes down 3%, you can literally just go get a $1.50 hot dog and watch hundreds of people spend hundreds of dollars every day. It's hard to get into right now based on the price that it's at. Casey's, while being a fairly small company that you might not think a lot of people would know, it doesn't really seem like that's reflected in the price. It seems like there is some value to be had there, but it's not a lot. It's not a ton, which is sort of disappointing. It's definitely going to go on my list for future reference. If it ever goes down substantially, I'll take another look at it and hopefully the value will be there then. So the company that I'm going to go with and invest $1,000 into across all of the companies whose tickers start with the letter C is Capital One Financial. So we now have $999.50 of Capital One Financial stock at $103.03 a share. Capital One has an interesting premise, which is that they are a very technology-centric bank in a time where a lot of deposits are going to be shifting around. You might remember from my video about the letter B that I excluded Bank of America because of this very reason. Well, now I'm including Capital One because it seems like it is correct for people to shift to Capital One, right? The deposits should be flowing from worse banking services to better banking services that are more stable, more secure, and more convenient and better for the customer. And I think that is what is going to happen to Capital One. They have this ideal that a lot of companies have, and it's sort of a rosy ideal. If you back it up, it's pretty powerful. In the 80s, they said, instead of being a bank that uses technology, we're going to be a technology company that does banking. And what that does is it allows you a lot of room to spend money at high rates of return. Banking is really a largely commoditized business. You can't really outcompete anyone on a lot of different avenues. You can reduce costs through austerity, you can, cut expenses, really minimize things and make things cheaper, or you can really go over the top and try to make things as convenient as possible for the customer and just be the better bank than everyone else. Capital One seems to be doing a pretty good job of that. And the other side of that token is that they really specialize in auto loans and auto financing. With the chip shortage and all of the environmental regulations going on, I think that used cars are going to get really expensive. The way that cars are being built is just totally changing right now. You're not going to get away from driving cars. Like if you've been to America at all, the road system is very sticky. It's very hard to get rid of. Everything is pretty much based on it. As used cars get more expensive, you need more auto loans. Whenever there's regulations, those regulations almost always just bubble up to the person giving the loan because you can't really get around it. It's expensive to keep up with regulations. The remote work is starting to shrivel up. The people are starting to have to drive back to their jobs to make their paychecks to pay their rent. So when you combine that with just doing a solid job already, being somewhat underpriced, and all the chaos that's going on in the banking system that could just be the exact opposite of what should be happening. People are panicking about Capital One's stock price when they should be excited because their business is going to be going up and they're going to be fine. Now, I don't want to put out any hard numbers because I want everyone to do their own research, but if you came to me in a year or two and said that Capital One's stock price has doubled, I would believe it. For that reason, it really beats out the 10, 20, 30% that you might get from a Casey's or a Costco.